Okay, we're just going to make sure everybody can hear me okay. If somebody could just type into the chat box that this is working and then you can see me, that would be great. Audio is working okay. So just somebody put into the chat line or the comments section here that you can hear me. And we should be up and running soon. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of information coming out from CMHC about this national home housing strategy, and wanted to do this webinar just to see if it can provide you with some value on the ins and outs of this program. So if everybody can hear me okay. Okay, see a couple people there saying that we're good, so awesome. We are going to do this now and see if we can go over to the slides that we've prepared, and I've got a Q&A section at the end, so hopefully we answer a bunch of questions, but if you have some questions at the end, fire away. Okay, so here we go. So anyway, I'm mortgage broker Rob Campbell. You know this because you've registered for this webinar, and hopefully this provides you with some insight into the national housing strategy implemented by through CMHC and through the Department of Finance and all the housing partners in the country. So here we go. The housing strategy is something that we have received news from CMHC and the government about trying to get Canadians into affordable housing options when it comes to down payment and repayment options as far as monthly costs and mortgage expenses. So the first-time home buyer requirement is in its simple core that at least one homeowner must be a first-time home buyer, which is considered as the following. So here's a list that they've provided. You've never purchased a home before, or you have gone through a recent breakdown in marriage. So what we're seeing a lot of recently is, we kind of hear that stat about 50% of couples, like that's 50% of couples end up going through a separation or divorce. That's a legit stat. We unfortunately, we see a lot of those here in my office for kind of preparing for next steps as far as living on their own or paying spousal support. So that is a reality. So it looks like the home buying incentive will incorporate people that are going through a actual marriage or common law separation and divorce to help people get back into another home. Or the other is in the last 4 years, you have not occupied a home that is owner occupied by you, the home buyer, or your spouse. So that currently applies with RSP, first-time home buyers incentive, where you can use your RSPs as a down payment. That applies the same, where you can tap into your RSPs tax-free if you've been renting for 4 or more years in the last 4 years. There's a bit of a calculation there as far as calendar years, but that is an option. But anyway, that's a whole home buyers different sources of down payment. But anyway, that's great that you can incorporate this into the home buyers incentive program. Next is the occupancy. So actually, if I go back, I thought I had an agenda here, but the occupancy of the property. So the property has to be owner occupied. It cannot be a rental property to take advantage of this incentive. So this incentive is to help first-time home buyers, so buying a home for the first time, meaning you don't already own a rental property, purchase their first home with the intent to occupy. The investment properties are not eligible. So that means you have to sign legal documentation saying that you do not intend to rent the property out and that you do in fact intend to occupy the property. So that's a must. Mortgage loan insurance requirements. Of course, this incentive program does tie into the CMHC guidelines and the other insurers in Canada. Again, there's 3 insurers, default insurers in Canada. There's CMHC, there's Canada Guarantee, and there's Genworth. CMHC is the Crown-owned corp, and Canada Guarantee and Genworth are private corporations that offer default insurance for high ratio mortgages. So mortgage loan insurance requirements here for this incentive program: the mortgages must be eligible for mortgage loan insurance through either Canada Guarantee, CMHC, or Genworth, as I just named them out. The first mortgage must be greater than 80% of the value of the property or greater than 80% loan to value, and is subject to mortgage loan insurance premium. So what that means is First mortgage, I wanted to explain what that means. The mortgage that is insured with CMHC or Canada Guarantee or Genworth has to be registered in first position. In our home buyer seminar that we do, that we've done webinars for, and actually, you know what, I think at the end of this presentation, I'm linking up to that free webinar that we do about the home buying process and what that looks like, separate from the incentive program. But anyway, first mortgage registration, think of mortgages registered as like an Olympic podium. First, second, third. First winner or gold medal has basically first rights of refusal on the whole property when it comes to payments and defaults. So this mortgage incentive has to be on the first mortgage, insured through one of the insurers, and it has to be greater than 80% loan to value to be able to qualify for mortgage loan insurance. And of course, mortgage loan insurance requirements mean 25-year amortization at the most. So that's what we have to qualify on. The stress test rate, which is currently, as I'm shooting this webinar right now, the current stress test rate is 5.19%. And you have to meet GDS and TDS requirements of 39 and 44, depending on your credit score. If your credit score is under a certain amount, those GDS, TDS numbers are a little lower. But that's what we have to fall into with this home buyers incentive program. Borrower eligibility. So are you even eligible for this this program? And we will talk about what that looks like right now. My camera, I'm getting some comments that my camera was out of focus there. Hope that's better now. Yep, okay, says thank you. Thank you, John, for I don't know why the camera, maybe I'm moving too much, but the camera went out of focus, but it's in focus now. So borrower eligibility, have to be a Canadian citizen, or you have to be a permanent resident of Canada, so you have to have your permanent residency status, or you could be a non-permanent resident who is legally authorized to work in Canada. So you have a work permit or a visa to work in Canada, and you might be eligible for this home buyers incentive program. Income requirements. So we need to be able to pay for the mortgage. So what does the income requirement look like? Well, your total qualifying income, household income, must be $120,000 per year or less. It cannot be more than $120,000. Okay. The income is subject to qualifying income requirements set out by the lenders and the mortgage loan insurers. So what does that mean? Well, if you're a salaried employee, that's pretty easy. Pay stub, job letter, maybe a T4, okay? If you're business for self, so if you're self-employed and you operate your own business, that's going to be subject to your net income, okay? So net income, maybe there's other programs that CMHC offers that are a bit of a workaround with that, but basically your line 150 of your NOA has to show your net income of $120,000 or less for the household, okay? Property types. Well, what kind of property types fall into this home buyers incentive program? Because there's a ton of properties. And by the way, this home buyers incentive program is for new builds and it's for resale. Okay, so and that's what we're going through now. I just jumped the gun a little bit. Eligible residential properties include new construction. So let me be clear, this incentive is good for up to a 10% match in down payment on new construction. Now in this area, as you probably know, new construction is just few and far in between. There's not a lot of new builds going on in the area. So that causes a little bit of a problem when we want to look at new construction. Resale homes. So homes that are available on MLS through realtor.ca or through your realtor that's representing you, that could see up to a 5% match in the down payment. Okay. And also residential properties can include 1 to 4 units. So what that means is a single unit home, a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. So 4 units, you live in one, you rent out the other 3. So a little bit of cash flow for you to get into that home. So those properties are eligible as well. Minimum down payment. So what does that down payment look like? Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit there with the 5% or the 10%, depending on whether it's a new build or a resale. So for a 1 to 2 unit property, 5% of the first $500,000 of the lending value and 10% of the remainder of the lending value for traditional sources of down payment. Well, you know, this is kind of it's a catch-22 because if we go back to what the maximum allowable amount is for the incentive, it's up to 4 times your household income. So that means the maximum purchase price that this is going to cover is a home of $480,000. But you know, the verbiage here that they've provided is $500,000. So basically 5% matching for a resale property from traditional sources of down payment. For a 3 to 4 unit property, which would be a triplex or a fourplex, you having, again, bringing that rental income. Again, I don't know that you're going to find a triplex or a fourplex in the GTA area for less than $480,000, but in some of the outlying areas in southwestern Ontario, certainly in eastern or northern Ontario, that could be a possibility. The minimum down payment is required is 10%. So that would be your minimum down payment, and then they would top it up to another 5%. So let's talk about down payment types. So what types of down payment are we looking at? Like, what can we use for sources of down payment with any CMHC insured loan, but through the incentive program as well, because that's what we're specifically talking about. And again, the home buyers webinar that we've shot just recently, packed full of information. At the end of the slide, you'll be able to get the website address for that to register for that. You don't have to visit a smoky conference hall or a hotel conference hall. It's all through on demand on the internet. But anyway, savings, down payment types would be savings. So traditional savings, you got money away in your savings account or your checking account. Second option would be a withdrawal from a registered retirement savings plan or an RRSP. Again, through the home buyers plan, you are able to do that to up to $35,000 now, which is phenomenal. Or a non-repayable financial gift from a relative. So again, down payment source can be a gift from a relative, an immediate relative, mom, dad, grandparents. It has to be immediate family. Can't really be extended family or friends, but again, there's some leeway there with CMHC if it makes sense. So the repayment requirements. So let's talk about getting this incentive program once it's registered on your property. How do you pay it back? The government's not just going to give you free money. That would be amazing, but that's not going to happen. So how do you repay this back? Well, the repayment requirements is that, as far as being registered on the property, the incentive's registered as a second mortgage on the title of the property. That comes with a little bit of problems. If they're registering as a second position, and let's say you hold this home for 10 years or 15 years and there's accumulated interest and you want to take advantage of maybe a second mortgage or a secured line of credit, this incentive program kind of creates a little bit of an issue with registration on title, but I digress. It'll be registered in second position. There's no regular principal payments on this mortgage registration. So there's no repayment. There's no interest bearing on it. It is a face value loan that the government's giving you to be able to allow you to get into a home and no interest bearing at all, which is amazing. I mean, let's try to find somebody who would lend us money with no interest. I mean, that's pretty rare and far and few in between. And it has a maximum term of 25 years. What that means is this is open-ended for 25 years. At the 25-year mark, you have to repay it if it hasn't already been repaid. Okay? So as far as repaying, the first-time home buyer will be required to repay the incentive amount after 25 years or when the property is sold, whichever is earlier. So you can't sell the property and just kind of get an IOU to the government and say, I'll get you in another 5 years. It has to be paid out and discharged with that mortgage being paid out if you do sell the property, okay? The home buyer can also choose to repay the incentive in full at any time without a prepayment penalty. So you get, you get a couple of $1,000s worth of this incentive to be able to move in, get going with your career and family and your saving money. You can actually pay that back at any time and have it discharged off of the lien discharged off of the property, and it's repaid without a penalty, which is amazing. Refinancing of the first mortgage will not trigger a repayment. This is a very beneficial thing to think about here. If you buy the home and you have the repayment, the incentive registered on your property, you can actually refinance your property in the future to access equity without having to trigger a repayment on that loan. So unless you actually go out and ask for that loan to be repaid and discharged, it's not going to be. It's there, kind of lurking in the shadows, but it's a good loan to have on your property if you need it to get into the property first. But a refinance will not trigger a repayment. So how are they going to calculate the repayment? Well, that's really interesting. At the time of a repayment, if the borrower receives a 5% or 10% incentive, again, remember, a 5% would be on a resale property, a 10% would be on a new build. If you took the 5% and you trigger the repayment, you're then having to repay 5% of the home's value to the government. The repayment will be based upon the home's fair market value. So You can't borrow this money and then just kind of sell your home to a friend or a family member to be able to get a smaller repayment amount on the sale price of the home. It has to be on the open market, has to be fair market value, and CMHC will likely do some sort of market valuation before discharging the loan to make sure that it all makes sense as far as market value. So they're going to share that upside with you. So if you sell the property and you make a profit on the property, they're going to take 5% of whatever that fair market value is going forward. If you take a loss on the property though, and this is actually something very, very beneficial, if your home value doesn't go up and there's a market correction, because there's always concern about the market going down from where we are, it's not always going to be roses. If it goes down, CMHC is going to share that loss with you. So you only repay 5 or 10% of the decreased value of the property once you've sold it. So all the risk is on the government from loaning this out. They really do want to make sure that the homeowner, the Canadian homeowner, has the ability to get this loan from the government if they can and if they qualify, but they're also willing to share the downside if you sell the property at a loss. So you don't owe them face value, you owe them the percentage of the value at the time of selling. So let's run through an example here. Anita wants to buy a home for $400,000. Okay, through the incentive, Anita can apply to receive $40,000 in a shared equity mortgage, 10% of the cost of the new home, through the program, on top of the minimum required down payment of $20,000, 5% of the purchase price from savings. This lowers Anita's mortgage amount and reduces the monthly expenses. Remember, the incentive is a loan that you don't have to repay, and it also reduces your mortgage amount that you're having to pay back to a lender. So in essence, it's reducing your monthly cost for your mortgage payment. As a result, Anita's mortgage is $228 less a month, or $27.36 a year. $226 a month is a lot of money. You know, that's a lot of money. That's heat, that's hydro, that's some groceries in the fridge. You know, so there's a huge benefit there. What if Anita has an annual qualifying income of $83,000? Well, you know, if you have an income and you're buying a home on your own and your income's up there, you know, it's going to reduce the total purchase price of the home. Remember, it's 4 times your annual salary that the maximum purchase price of that home can be. So in this event, it's going to reduce her purchase price to around $350,000. Now Anita's probably looking at a condo, depending on the city, maybe a condo townhome, but again, shelter. That's the goal that CMHC is trying to put forward with this National Housing Incentive Program, is shelter for Canadians, right? Anita still has the required down payment of the 5% of the purchase price from savings and can apply to receive $35,000 in a shared equity mortgage of the newly constructed home. So maybe Anita's buying a newly constructed townhome condominium. Okay? Perfect example. This is going to work. This would reduce Anita's mortgage payments by $200 less a month, or $2,400 a year. Again, reducing costs per month, no interest bearing on that incentive, repaid within 25 years or when Anita sells the property. A lot of options there. So what if Anita sells the home for $420,000? Well, at this time, the incentive will need to be repaid. Anita will repay the incentive as a percentage of the home's current value. Again, remember, current value, guys. And this would result in Anita repaying 10% or $42,000 at the time of selling the house. Again, has to be the upside or the downside, right? If there's upside, they're going to take the upside. So let's look at some more examples. Let's estimate the average increase of a home of 2% in market value year over year. Some years we're going to be flat. Some years we're going to go down. That's just how the market ebbs and flows. But we're going to use in this example just a 2% increase year over year for market value. So in 2019, the purchase price would be $480,000. That's the max amount that you can do based on the household income and 4 times annual salary for the 120. So the incentive there is worth $24,000. Well, if they sell in 5 years, if you sell in 5 years and you have to repay this upside, you know, we're using 5% as a resale, not new build. In 5 years, if the home value is only $530,000, you're going to have to repay $26,500. That's only $2,500 increase. That's not bad. You know, the upside there is you're selling for another $50,000. You're only going to owe them back $2,500. You get to pocket the rest. Great upside. Let's look at 5% market value year over year in 5 years. Well, if you buy today for 480 and you sell in 5 years for 612,500, that's using a 5% average year over year increase in value. Again, you're only going to have to repay about $6,600 in incentive back on like top up. But look at the market value you're getting. You're getting a lot of money. What is that? That's 20 is going to be 5, so that's $132,000. That's a huge upside to take advantage of this program. So again, a lot of upside here to a program like this. If you have any questions, guys, put them into the chat box here. I'll just field some Q&A here. We're almost wrapped up, but I'll wait to see some questions here. Again, home buyer incentive program, not for everybody, but it might be a viable option. I know some people don't want to have the government register a mortgage or a lien on their property and kind of meddle in the upside or the downside, but some people might only have that option. You know, some people only have so much in RSPs. Some people don't have any family to gift them the down payment difference or an early inheritance through a family member. But it's a great program to at least inquire about. If you have any questions, put them in the chat here. Again, if you have any questions after watching this and we don't get to your responses here, just send me an email at rob@therobcampbell.com, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. Do me a favor, in the subject line, just put Home Buyers Incentive Program so I know that you watched the webinar and that you have some questions. So Julie, we just got one question here. Julie says, if we don't sell in 25 years and we want it forever home, do we have? Yes. Okay. So the question is, if you don't sell, let's say you buy a 3-bedroom home today, a freehold, and it's $480,000 purchase price, and you don't want to move. Let's say it's in the perfect area. It's in the perfect area, close to work, close to schools. I mean, it ticks off all the boxes. It's very rare that we see people, Julie, that live in the same home for 25 years. But if that's the case, you just have to pay it back within the 25-year span. So, you know, on a $480,000 purchase price, 10% is $48,000, half of that's $24,000. So you've got to anticipate repaying that back within the 25 years. You could do that through taking out equity in the property. You can do that from just saving and like a forced savings plan, maybe through a TFSA or other means. So yeah, you do have to pay it back within the 25 years. Sam, is this qualify for anywhere in Canada? Anywhere in Canada, Sam. So not just in Ontario, anywhere in Canada. By the way, as a mortgage broker, I'm licensed in Ontario, but I can arrange mortgages all over the country, except Quebec. We cannot arrange mortgages in Quebec. I can certainly refer you to somebody in Quebec, but anywhere. We've just arranged a mortgage for somebody in St. John's, Newfoundland. So anywhere in Canada that this incentive program would work, we can definitely help you out with that. So this has been about a half an hour, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. I don't see any other questions in here. I think it's all pretty straightforward. Again, if you have any questions, send me an email, rob@therobcampbell.com. Also, we've got a home buyers webinar that I was kind of touching on before. It's a free webinar going over the whole home buying process. So not just for first-time home buyers. If you already own a home and you're thinking about upselling or downselling and moving, upsizing or downsizing, not upselling, upsizing or downsizing, and you want to move forward, this free webinar goes over the whole home buying process, the fees associated with doing that, the costs as far as hard costs and soft costs, current mortgage rates and how to qualify for best rates, and mortgage strategies that could save you thousands of dollars over the next 3 to 5 years and potentially have your mortgage paid off in 5 to 7 years. So if you're interested in that home buyers webinar, I'm going to put the link in the chat box here for this webinar, but in case you don't get to it in time, you can find out more about that at therobcampbell.com/home buyer class. And that's going to be a webinar that we've already done, that we've recorded, much like this one, where you can actually go in and watch at your own pace. Again, not going to have to get you to come out to the Holiday Inn or some, smoky boardroom somewhere and force your hand and feel like you're kind of forced into showing up and maybe signing up for something. Not at all. This home buyers class is all pre-recorded, tons of information for you to watch and take in, and it gives you some ideas about what's out there right now as far as stress tests, different mortgage products, different lenders that we deal with, different loan to values and what that looks like, CMHC insurance, what that means, just a ton of value that you can watch. It runs about an hour and a half, I believe. So it's pretty lengthy. You're going to want to be able to make sure that you dedicate your time to watch it in its entirety, because I believe the software will only allow you to, I think it only allows you to pause it, which we used, so you can't go back. So you want to make sure that if you watch it, you're watching it at your own pace and taking it all in, okay? And in that homebuyers class, we put up some PDFs for you to download as well. Our homebuyers guide, just like a 50-plus page homebuyers guide that we have, going over all the stuff that we talk about in there. Free home evaluation if you own a home already and you kind of want to get an idea of what the value is worth without having to worry about calling anybody in to do an hard appraisal or a couple of realtors. If that kind of freaks you out or maybe makes you nervous about getting the home all tidy, we can do a very kind of fair market value assessment. We'll give you that report as well. As well as some other home buyer incentives that we have. So anyway, guys, therobcampbell.com/homebuyers class is where you can find that. And that kind of wraps this up. So thank you so much. Do me a favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, give me a thumbs up. We're going to try to put this up on YouTube as well, because I feel that there's good value. Give me a thumbs up if you found value in here. Again, comment below if you have any further questions. I'll be able to reply to those. And really hope that you found this valuable, guys, at the Home Buyers Incentive Program in 2019. Anyway, Rob Campbell, the mortgage broker, out. Thanks so much for watching.